You might just be closer to retirement than you realise, because most people focus on the wrong numbers when they try to work it out. So let's walk through what actually determines whether you can retire sooner. When people think about retirement, they usually focus on one thing, a number. How much do I need? How big does my super have to be? What's the target? But that's only part of the picture, and this is where people can get it wrong. Because retirement isn't driven by a single number, it's driven by a relationship between what you have and what you need. And if that relationship is stronger than you think, you might be closer than you realise. This is something I see quite a lot in practice. People assume they're years away from retiring, when in reality, they're much closer, because they've been measuring the wrong thing. So let's break down what actually moves the needle. The first one is spending. Not your super balance, not your investments, your spending. Because if you need $100,000 a year, that's very different to needing $150,000 a year. And that difference flows through everything. It changes how much you need, how much risk you take, and when you can retire. So this is where it starts. And what most people don't realise is, it's not about what you could spend. It's about what you will actually spend. I see people assume a higher number, just to be safe. That pushes retirement further away than it needs to be. They feel that they need to keep working when they can comfortably retire. The second piece is debt. If you retire with a mortgage, that changes everything. Because now your investments aren't just funding your lifestyle. They're also funding your repayments. And that increases the pressure on your portfolio. But if that debt is gone, suddenly your income requirements drop. And that can pull retirement forward, sometimes by years. The third piece is how your money is structured. Two people can have the exact same balance and end up in very different positions, simply because of how things are set up. One might be paying more tax, or drawing income inefficiently. And that directly impacts how far their money goes. That's why structure matters more than people expect. And this is where it becomes important, because small inefficiencies here don't just cost you a bit, they can affect whether you can retire at all, or whether you feel comfortable doing it. The next piece is timing risk. If markets fall just before or just after you retire, and your plan hasn't allowed for it, that can have a lasting impact, because you're no longer building your investments, you're drawing on them. And that timing is what makes the difference. So when you're close to retirement, it's not just about getting a return. It's about managing how and when those returns happen. And finally, flexibility. Even with a good plan, things change. Spending changes, markets change, life changes. So the question isn't just, can you retire? It's, how flexible is your plan if things don't go perfectly? Because this is what I see quite often. People delay retirement. Not because they can't afford to retire, but because they're not confident. They haven't connected the dots between what they have, what they need, and how it actually works in practice. And once you do that, you can make a much clearer decision. This is general in nature, so it's important to consider your own situation. But if you look at your position through this lens, you might find that retirement isn't as far away as you thought. However, if you are approaching retirement and want structured guidance rather than trying to figure this out alone, I work with Australians in exactly that position. You can find details below.